What's going on, everyone? This is Jerome Reid, and I am joined today by Andrew Holt. Andrew is the worship pastor at an amazing church called The Belonging. He is also a husband and a father. Andrew, thank you so much for being a guest on the show today. It's truly an honor.
Thank you so much for having me, bro. Honored to be here.
First question I want to ask you, Andrew, especially during the times that we're in, it's going to sound weird, but it'll make sense. What does
Yeah.
an average day look like for you?
Oh man, it depends on the week and the month and the season we're in. Like you said, I'm a worship pastor at a church in Nashville called the Belonging Co. And so if it's a Sunday, I'm at church all day. If it's a Tuesday, I'm getting ready for church. We have church on Tuesday nights. Our church actually
Mm,
started on Tuesday night. If it's a Saturday, like a couple days ago, I'm hanging out with my daughter and my wife all day. I mowed the lawn for the first time this season
wow.
on Saturday. So true dad mode. I got
Yes,
our daughter
sir.
Olive, got our daughter Olive in the car, and we went to Home Depot and got all the supplies we needed. And so yeah, it's just different every day, man.
That's awesome, dude.
Yeah,
Now, do you play any instruments? And if so, what's your favorite instrument and why?
yeah. I play mostly guitar. Um, I love the acoustic guitar. That's kind of what I play the most. But I also love the piano. I'm not very good at it, but I can mess around enough to write on the piano.
Yeah.
Um, but that's something I want to get better at. I think piano is one of my favorite instruments. I'm just not as good at it as I am
Hmm.
guitar. So
Listen, man, things can change. You never know.
yeah, come on, man. Come on.
You never know. Now, did you always want to be a worship pastor? Was that always like your plan, or did God kind of change that on you?
Yeah, I mean, pretty early on, I knew that um, God had put such a fire in me for worship. Like I started leading worship when I was 13 years old, just at my church that I grew up at, and mostly like was leading worship like in house churches, just
Hmm.
like small groups. Um, my parents actually like held this like young adult thing at their house on Sunday nights. So I led worship there a lot, and then I got involved at our youth group leading worship. And so I mean, I when I was really really little, I played sports, but I was so short that it became quickly obvious that I was not going to be an athlete. I was I was self-aware enough at the time to know that that wasn't going to be what I did professionally, even though I still play basketball now, but
There you go.
I'm not great at it. But yeah, so pretty early on, I knew that I love music. I love leading worship. I love seeing my friends encounter God.
Hmm.
And I just had like a thing in me for the local church as well. Like I loved being a part of the local church, serving the church at a super young age. So yeah, I think I've always known that this is what I would want to do. I didn't know exactly what it would look like.
Hmm.
Um, and it's obviously evolved over the years. Like I have such a passion now for songwriting, and I didn't have that 6 or 7 years ago.
Wow.
I was happy to be singing someone else's songs, but now I'm loving songwriting. And the cool thing about my job here at the Belonging Co. is I get to be a worship pastor and get to pastor our amazing team and get to be a part of leading our amazing team, and also get to be a part of the sound of our church and
Hmm.
writing songs for our church. And so it's a bit of everything. Like I get to be a part of all these things that I get to love and do. And so, yeah, I think I've long answer, but yes, for
No,
a
no,
while
it's
I've
totally
known
good.
that's what I wanted to do.
Dude,
Yeah.
that's incredible. And I think what I love about what you were just sharing is um it started somewhere, like that seed was planted, like you said, it was at a young age, and then it kind of developed over time, which is
Yeah.
super cool. Like for me, I'm pastor as well, but I didn't always think that was my, like I didn't think that's what I was gonna do. But it's amazing, um, how God kind of develops you. Because even for myself, I never even considered myself to be someone who would want to lead worship. And an opportunity came a couple years ago where I'm like, God, I don't really know if I want to do this. And it's one of those things where it's like God knew all along, but it's we're the ones that kind of need to catch up a little bit to kind of figure out that that was always
Totally.
God's plan. But that's
Yeah,
so cool,
man.
man.
Yeah.
Now, what would you say for a church set list? So you're trying to prepare your set list. When it comes to creating a set list for a church service, what would you say are two things that you would recommend church leaders or pastors do beforehand, if that makes sense?
Yeah, great question. I think for me, it's always more about asking God what he wants to do, trying to be sensitive to what the Holy Spirit wants to do in a service is a big deal for me. And so,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want that to sound like overly spiritual, like it needs to be this whole spiritual experience, but it's more of just like having an open heart and open mind to God. And
Yeah.
I try to walk that way where it's like, I don't feel like our walk with God was supposed to be hyper spiritual, like religious. It was just meant to be natural.
Mm-hmm.
It was meant to be just like a conversation like we're having right now. And so when I'm like getting to the point where we're picking a set list, like for us as a team, we're always co-leading for the most part. So I'm leading with someone else. So I usually like start a conversation with someone. I'm like, hey, what do you feel like God's speaking to you right now? Are there any songs that you want to lead?
Mm-hmm.
And then I've just found that God's so kind in that way. If you're open to him and you're sensitive to what he's speaking and songs that he's highlighting for you to lead, it's crazy how often like we'll pick a set list and it'll go right in line with what's happening in the service that day or what
Yeah.
whoever's preaching is bringing. And it's not like we like are always asking like, hey, what are you preaching about this Sunday? We don't really do that. It's more of just asking God, what do you want to do this week? And God knows better than we do, So
Right. Yeah.
I think being sensitive to that is one of the main things. And then I do think it's important to kind of think about the structure of a set list as far as keys go, like, and also just dynamic flow and theme.
Mm-hmm.
So I try to always think about like putting myself in the service, like if we start with this moment of praise and high energy, and if it's in a certain key, like thinking about where the next song lands and how that's going to feel.
Yeah.
And even as I'm planning, I'm thinking about those transition moments. So it can just be one seamless experience where people can not be distracted and be able to
Yeah,
encounter God.
exactly. Yeah.
Um,
And that's good.
so yeah, I think those are a couple of the main things that I think about for sure.
And I think like what you shared is really important. And I love how, like you said, it's not supposed to be this religious thing, it's supposed to be natural, kind of like our
Yeah,
conversation with God. And I think it's so good when you put him first. I mean, it's we know this, but when you put God first really in everything, he
yeah,
will open that door where if we try to do it on our own, it's going to take a lot longer. It's going to be harder. We're going to get frustrated. And then you find yourself, about to lead worship and you're frustrated, but it's like, that's not what it's supposed to be like when it comes to
totally.
that moment, especially in a service.
Yeah, that's great, man. So
Now,
good.
I know that every church is different when it comes to like their worship team and developing their team. But if I'm allowed to ask, what does your process look like at the Belonging Co. if someone wants to be a part of the band? So, for example, is there an interview process? Do they have to fill out an application? Is there an audition? Kind of what does that process look like?
Yeah, I mean, we're a very unique church in a very unique situation. We're obviously located in Nashville, Tennessee. And so our church is full of musicians, it's full
Wow.
of singers, it's full of worship leaders. Whereas a lot of worship pastors and churches have the opposite problem, like they're just
Yeah.
like dying for more people. We're actually on the other end of that spectrum where it's like if we had everyone that could technically do it on the platform leading, then there would be no rotation. It would just be like you're on maybe once a year or something crazy,
Wow.
So
Yeah.
because of that, very early on, our senior pastor Henry Seeley and his wife Alex Seeley, they lead our church. They're both our pastors,
Hmm.
and they intentionally, Henry kind of started the team, the worship team. They started in their basement, and it from the very beginning was all very relational.
Hmm.
So for us, it looks like just encouraging people, to come get involved, get planted in the house, go through what we call DNA, which is a 4-week thing that happens quarterly, where it's essentially just like coming and learning the heart of the house,
Hmm.
being poured into. And then a lot of times we're encouraging people to get involved serving somewhere else in the church. Um, a lot of the guys on our team, guys or girls on our team, started serving like on our production team, or they were serving in the parking lot, parking cars. That's
Yeah.
just the heart of our house is very like just get involved, and anywhere you're serving, there's no like hierarchy of serving in our church. It's all like, if you're serving the church, then we're all on the same page. We're doing the same goal,
Yeah,
is
exactly.
providing a place for people to encounter Jesus. Um, and so because of that, like, we're able to really get to know people and build relationships with people before they ever serve on the worship team.
Yeah.
And that is important for us for a couple reasons. Like, um, one one reason, it's just, we want people to make sure people are planted in the church
Mm-hmm.
before they take a position of leadership like that, and that this is their home church. They're not here for any other reason or any other motives. It's actually just, no, this place has changed my life. It's set me free, and so I want to be able to be a part of that for someone else.
Yeah.
A lot of the people on our team, that you would know their names. They didn't come here because we asked them to be on the worship team. They came to our
Mm-hmm.
church because God drew them here, and they had their lives changed. And then they got involved on the team after that. It wasn't the
Wow.
opposite way. I think a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times people look at our church from the outside looking in, they're like, oh, they must have hired all these people to come and be a part of the team or something.
Yeah.
And we actually get that question a lot. And it's like, no, like, everyone that you see, that their names are volunteers. They're serving, they're
That's
in the house,
amazing.
they're on planning center just like everyone else. And that's such the heart of our house, is
Mm-hmm.
that we're all here to serve, to provide a place for people to encounter God. And then the beauty of that is that before I get to lead, like yesterday, I led worship all day long at church, and I could look around the circle of the people, and there were a couple people that were serving for the first time yesterday,
Mm-hmm.
but I knew them. I'd had relationship with them. I'd had coffee with them. I could look around the circle as we were like praying before we went up to lead, and I know them. I have a relationship with
Yeah.
them. I know that we're all on the same page. We're in unity. And so it's just this process for us. Those are the priorities. And if you notice, I didn't mention anything about gifts or skill
Mm-hmm.
sets, or
Mm-hmm.
all that stuff figures itself out. But if we don't put heart first, if we don't make that the priority of, man, we're making sure that people are planted in this church, this is their house, and that they have a heart that's sensitive to God and sensitive to the Holy Spirit and worship, and that's how we lead,
Yeah.
then we can have all the gifts and the talents and the best team and the best band and the best vocalist, but we might miss the whole point of what we're doing this for,
Exactly.
and so I think that for us is the main priority, and God works the rest out, and we make
Mm-hmm.
sure, that what we do is excellent and well done, but that's not the main priority.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's kind of a little bit of the process. It's definitely unique, and I'm not saying it has to be how everyone does it, but for us, that was definitely the blueprint that God gave our leadership, Henry and Alex. And
Mm-hmm.
um, when I came on staff in 2016, I kind of just like kept running it with it in that way, and the structure he set up. And it's been seasonal. Like right now, we're expanding. Our church is growing a lot. We're actually
Yeah.
opening a new location like an hour south of the city. And so the team's growing fast. It's growing at a pretty fast rate, faster than I've ever experienced.
Yeah.
But those like same heart things don't change. I felt God
Exactly.
say at the beginning of the year, I was like, how are we going to grow the team so much? He's like, well, I can still do that in a different timetable.
Right.
And
Yeah,
so it's
exactly.
just trusting that God's going to highlight the right people that need to be a part of it. And he's been so kind to do that. And we've never been without. Every time there's been a need on the team, he's highlighted the person that needs to be a part of it and needs to step up and
Mm-hmm.
take the opportunity. So yeah, that's how we
Dude,
kind of do
that's
it.
I love that entire process that you just shared, and I love how you mentioned it's about the heart and having that
Yeah.
heart for serving, because it's true. There's a time and place, obviously, for the gifts and the talents, but if the
Yeah.
heart isn't there, or we're not focusing on that, I think we can get so caught up and all those other things where
Yeah.
it's like God can take care of all that. You could be someone that has a heart to serve. You might not even be the best singer in the moment, but you have a heart to serve. And then, a year down the
Right.
line, things change inside of you. And I've seen God do it. Like I've seen people who could not sing. And then all of a sudden they woke
Hmm.
up one day and they had a tune in their head. And I heard them, and I'm like,
Yeah.
sing? Well, it just kind of started. I said, maybe, but I think God was doing something on the inside of you from the get-go.
Totally,
Um,
man.
so yeah, no, I love that process, man. I think that's really important. Like you said, not every church
Yeah.
is going to do that, but I like how you said it's unique because, like for us, we have the opposite problem where we're trying to get people involved.
Mm-hmm.
But then for you, it's, we have the people, but now it's like we got to kind of maintain it and structure it a little differently.
100%. And I think no matter where you are, you can still start with the heart, you know?
Yeah.
I think that is something that anyone can do and hopefully should strive to do, because, you know, I think it was Brian Johnson that said it, but he said it's way easier to bring someone onto the team than to have to ask them to step down from the team.
Yeah.
And obviously things happen and like we have to deal with things in people's lives. But if we can know people's hearts and know where they are with God before we put them in a position of leadership, I think you're making a way for them to win. And that's the goal. Like we say it a lot in our church, like people over position is one of our priorities. So your heart and where you are with God and where you are with your life is way more important than what you can do for our church. And I think even if you're in a church where it's like we're dying for musicians, you should still be caring about people's hearts and where they are, and just loving them for who they are as a child of God, more than what they can bring to your church and what they can do for your team. And if that's your priority, God's always going to honor that, and God's always going to make a way. But using people just for their gift is such a dangerous place to be in.
Yeah, it is.
You know, and I think people, especially in Western church culture, are honestly starting to get really tired of that way of doing it, where it's like, well, it just feels like all they care about is I'm there and I confirm on planning center, I show up on time and I know my parts.
Yeah.
You know, but after the service, no one's saying, how are you doing? Like, how's your family? No one's catching up with me, you know, or maybe they're just handing me a paycheck and I'm walking out the door and that's it, you know? And I think if whatever the situation, whatever the system you have in place as a church, making sure that the number one priority is people's hearts and making sure that they're connected with God and that they're walking with God in a healthy way. And obviously we don't always win at that, but I think if that's the heart, at least of it, then God will definitely honor that. And setting up your systems in a way, like ask God, how does that work for our church?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, like what I just explained, how does it work for us? But you know, maybe it just looks a little different. Maybe it's tweaking some things in how you bring people onto the team to make sure that that is the priority and the number one goal.
Exactly, man. Andrew, you got it right there. We could literally end right here. But I got a couple more questions I want to ask you, because you're a man of insight. You're a man of insight. Now you guys released a new rendition. I say new rendition because the song existed before, called "Turn Your Eyes," it's an incredible song. And I want to ask, it's kind of like a two-part question, but one, what was it like to lead alongside Natalie Grant? And two, how did that song, or how did the rendition of that song come together?
Yeah, well, Natalie is one of my really, really good friends, and
awesome.
such a special person for our church and our team. Her and her husband and her 3 daughters joined our church, I think, in 2017.
Okay.
I could be wrong. If Natalie listens to this, she may say I'm wrong, but so they've been a part of our house for a while, and her and her husband Bernie are also like a pivotal part of our worship team. They help lead a monthly thing we do with our worship leaders, which is just, we call it like worship leader discipleship, where we just kind of get together once a month and pray and worship together and just hang out, break bread together. And so they're a massive part of our team. And so I get to lead with her a lot. It's an honor and privilege, and she's the best. But that song actually started with Bernie and Natalie. They started doing this thing in 2020, when the whole world shut down, called A Song a Day, keeps the crazies away, I think is what they called it. And they would literally just like post a video on Instagram, just Bernie on the piano, Natalie sitting next to him, singing songs, random songs. You know, some were worship songs, some were pop songs, like random stuff. And it was awesome. Like, they're a couple of the most talented people in the world, so they were killing it. And one day Natalie just decided she wanted to do this version of Turn Your Eyes. They said that they were just playing around with it before they recorded the video, and she kind of wrote this new melody for the verse lyrics for that first verse, and this new melody for the chorus as well. And so they put it on Instagram, and that was kind of where it ended. And I'd actually, we're planning to write with Bernie and Natalie and another friend of ours called Daniela. She's a worship leader at our church, Daniela
Yeah.
Mason. And we were planning to write another idea that we had, and we came to Natalie's house, Natalie and Bernie's house, and they said, well, we can write that, but we also have this other like idea that we started a couple months ago for Instagram, and they played it for us.
Wow.
And we were both like, yeah, let's write that instead. You know, it felt so special. And I love songs that take old hymns like that and just give new breath to them. Just because there's such depth in hymns, and it's something that people can grab a hold of quickly and sing and feel like they've been singing it their whole lives, you know?
Yeah.
And so we started writing it, and so she already had it. It got the kind of first verse, and then we tweaked the chorus a little bit, and then we wrote that second verse. And we knew like once we had written that section of the song, like the bridge was going to have to be like another level. Like it needed to kind of lift and like take a life of its own kind of thing. And so Daniela actually had this idea of bringing that in the light thing back, because the way that Natalie had reworked the song, she had left that part of the chorus out, in the light of his glory and grace.
Yeah.
And she's like, and Daniela was like, what if we brought that in and the bridge of like this idea of like, now that we have turned our eyes upon Jesus and we're standing in the light of his glory and grace, like what happens? Like what happens in the room when people turn their eyes to Jesus? So we were kind of putting ourselves in the room, you know, of people singing this together. And so we just started kind of talking about that, like, oh, there's freedom, there's healing, there's revival, you know, chains start to break. And so we started just like singing this together. And even in the studio that day, like writing it, we had the vision of like that, like kind of stacking harmony thing where it's like, in the light of his glory, in the light of his glory, in the light, you know?
Yeah.
And all of us were kind of just singing together, getting amped, like all recording videos on our phone because we were so excited because we knew it was amazing. At least we felt like it was amazing in the moment. And then, so we finished the song, we like recorded just like a little work tape. And like a month later, it was like our first like time in the new building. We just opened a new building last year.
That's amazing.
And we were still like kind of on lockdown. So we were just doing live stream. No one was in the room.
Yeah.
And I'd already planned like before I knew what the first day was going to be gone. Like I was on vacation with my family. But Natalie led Turn Your Eyes for the first time that day, like the building had just opened. And I remember live streaming in and watching and just going, okay, like I knew the song was special, but this feels like really, really special.
Yeah.
And the church, like our church just here in Nashville really grabbed a hold of it and started singing it. And then we came to conference 2020 in September, and we were able to do it like half capacity, socially distanced. And we were in rehearsals leading up to it, and I'd had this idea of doing Turn Your Eyes the last night of conference, like maybe just Natalie and Bernie on piano to start, and then having a choir like join them in the bridge. And so we were like planning, dreaming about it. We were in rehearsal with the band that was going to be playing the last night of conference, like the week before conference started. And one of the guitar players on the team, his name's Austin Goodlow, he just started playing like this kind of gospel progression that you hear in the recording now. Honestly, half as a joke, like this would be kind of funny, like if we switch the progression. And then all of us kind of looked at each other and we were like, no, that's amazing. Like, this is kind of cool. Should we actually do it? And so we kind of like just started riffing on it as a band, like playing around with it, just joking in rehearsal because no one else was there. It was just like me and the band. And Austin Davis, who's actually on staff here as a producer for our music, he was playing drums and kind of helped like build this whole arrangement for that, what happened on the night, which was just, we did the song as normal and then kind of went into this whole gospel vamp where we upped the tempo, changed the progression, and all that started in that rehearsal. And so that's kind of like the long story of how the song came to be. But that night, honestly, bro, that night when she led it and we went into the whole new arrangement, something really significant happened in our church. And it just felt like the ceiling kind of got ripped off for worship. And the limits kind of got ripped off, and nothing, honestly, worship in our church hasn't been the same since that moment. Like there's just a new freedom, there's a new like authority even, and even people in the congregation you can feel are more free. They can feel, they feel more free to worship, to dance. And it just feels like God really used that song and that arrangement to shift something for our house. And so it's a really, really special song to us in our church. And we're stoked that it's out now for everyone to be a part of.
It's
hopefully be able to sing
incredible.
it in their churches.
Yeah, honestly, like I remember when I heard it on YouTube, and I'm not gonna lie to you, I saw it and I'm like, oh, I've heard this, I've heard of Turn Your Eyes before.
Right.
How's this new? And then when I clicked on it, I'm telling you, my laptop, man, if it could catch on fire, bro, like it was so good. I'm not even joking. I'm watching on YouTube.
Come on, man.
And I'm like having a praise party in my office by myself because of what God was doing in my office, let alone, you know, what I was watching, what God was doing at the church. And so I know that if that's what God can do in those moments where, you know, you're writing a song, and even if you like how you shared the backstory, and all the details and how you guys had a plan, but it's shifted to writing a different song. Then you had it planned out, but then the piano player decided to mess it around a little bit. Then you're like, no, that sounds better. It's like God planned out all of that to kind of get to where you guys were. Not saying that the song 100%. Wouldn't have been powerful beforehand, but I think, you know, God wanted it to be this very way that you guys wrote it. So I just want to, you know, thank you guys for just being so faithful and listening to the voice of God, and with the way that you guys write. I think it speaks volumes to your leadership, to your pastor, and what they've done over the years. Which is incredible. Another question that I wanted to, bro. I mean, honestly, man. No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, just even you sharing that you had that encounter in your office, you know, like that is the goal of why we release music. You know, we couldn't care less about how many streams it gets or how high on the charts or whatever it gets. Like if people aren't encountering God through the music, like, and encountering him the same way that we encountered him when we wrote the songs and when we started playing them in church, then we're not really winning. Even if it does really well in the world standards, like that's not our standard. Our standard is like, the whole reason we release music is so that essentially that we're not stingy with the songs that God has given us, because we know that same encounter that we're having with him, like, and that same freedom that song, for instance, brought in our house, it's accessible for anyone, you know. And if God chooses to use these songs that we're able to be a part of to do that, then that for us is the goal. And so it's just encouraging, you know, for you to say that, like, by yourself listening in your office and, you know, having a praise party, like that is so amazing to me, because that's why we do it. That's why we work so hard to release the music. It's not for any other reason, you know. That's the reason. And so that's awesome, dude.
No, again, thank you. And I know it's done that probably for so many more people. You'll probably get letters in the mail if people still do that anymore.
Totally. We've gotten letters through the internet mail.
Yeah, exactly. Email. People don't really do handwritten letters anymore.
No.
Andrew, for you personally, who are maybe some artists or creatives that have inspired you?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. Growing up, my parents always had worship music on in the house. And so there's a lot of artists that have really shaped me. But in like middle school, high school, I started listening to like Jesus culture. They were a massive part of me kind of growing a hunger for just the Holy Spirit, and more like going after more than just singing a song in a set, you know. I grew up in like the Baptist church, and there's a lot of beautiful things about the Baptist church. It shaped me, made me who I am today. They love Jesus, they love the Word of God. But I remember when I started watching Jesus culture lead on YouTube, because at that point they were kind of just like releasing music on YouTube and like covering other people's songs, you know. But I could sense something different about it, and I was really hungry, and actually like started this like Thursday night. I think it was on Thursday night. It's like worship night for anyone in our church, and we would just like open it up and like worship for a couple hours.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I was like trying to find a context, how do I have this in my own life? How do I like lead like that? And so they were a massive part, and of that. I'm just trying to think of who else. I mean, outside of like Christian worship world, I listen to like a lot of stuff that John Bellion does. I don't know if you know who
Mm-hmm.
that is.
Yeah, I've heard of him.
But he's really inspired me as a songwriter. I think the stuff that he's a part of producing and songwriting is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm constantly always listening to people,
Yeah, yeah,
and trying to find inspiration. But yeah, there's so many people that I could name, but a lot of like that kind of world, Jesus culture, really shaped me. I actually, I felt God tell me that I was supposed to marry my wife, or I was supposed to date my wife at a Jesus culture conference. So
wow,
in Chicago, yeah. So they're pretty significant in my life.
yeah,
I got to meet Banning Liebscher. He came and preached at church a few years ago, and I like picked him up from the airport, and I told him that, and he was just like, "That is amazing! Like
that's so
that God
cool.
had like told me to be with my wife at a
Yeah,
Jesus Culture conference." And I've gotten to talk to Chris Kiwala a few times now, and so it's always amazing, like to be able to be a part, like to meet someone who's
yeah,
influenced you so much, and so yeah, it's awesome.
dude. And what's crazy is so you're in the States and I'm out here in Canada, but like
Oh,
God
cool.
didn't tell me to date my wife at a Jesus Culture concert, but I remember watching a conference online. And for me,
Yeah,
it was Jesus Culture as well that kind of helped influence me a little bit. But when I watched one of their conferences, that's when I felt that that's when I felt the call that God was saying to go into ministry. And
wow,
I forget the title of the message, but I know that Pastor Bannon, he was talking all about your call and what that looks like, and how like if you feel it
yeah,
from God, just chase after it. Don't look to everyone else and ask what their insight is, because their calling is going to be different. And I remember crying in my bedroom and I was like, how does this guy know what I'm going through? This makes no sense.
right.
And yeah, so it was an incredible moment for me. But I'm hearing you share a similar thing with GS culture. I'm like, hey, there's something there. So I think that's pretty cool.
For sure, man. For sure. I think it was just like this thing that they, in the early days, where they were just going after God. It was for no other reason. It was
Yeah.
just like God was moving in their youth group, and they were just like putting it up on YouTube. Like, and I felt that through the YouTube videos.
Yeah, exactly.
And so like if this kid in like Tennessee watching on YouTube who was just like learning how to lead worship, can grab a hold of that. Like to me, that's such a special thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it legit like lit something in me that I wanted to be a part of something more than just normal church, like
Yeah.
going through the motions and just singing some songs. And um, like I wanted to be a part of something that now I'm honored to get to be a part of something like that. And so I'm really, really thankful for them. There's some
Mm-hmm.
special people there.
That's incredible, dude. I won't
Yeah.
take up too much more of your time. I do have a couple more questions to ask, if that's all right. This
Yeah.
next question, it's going to kind of bring you back a little bit to the days when maybe you were in Sunday school. Um, and
Yeah.
the question is this: who is someone in the Bible? Now, unfortunately, you can't say Jesus for this moment of the question, but who is
Okay.
someone in the Bible other than Jesus that you can relate to, and why?
Oh man, great question. Um, I think I I've been like reading quite a bit about the disciples and Jesus' relationship with the disciples. So I think maybe not a specific disciple in particular, but just the disciples in general. Like
Mm-hmm.
I just like I want to live a life that's like that, where you lay down everything to follow
Mm-hmm.
Jesus. And what's amazing about the disciples is that they were all like professionals, they had
Yeah.
jobs, they had things that they were doing, and they chose to like lay it down to like give everything up to follow Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really have always found that so special and amazing. and I was reading um, about the day before Jesus chose his 12 disciples. You know, he spent the whole night before alone with God.
Yeah.
Um, and it was like this beautiful intentionality that he got away with God to before he made this massive decision. Like, these are the people that are going to take Christianity around the world. You know, like they
Mm-hmm.
were the ones that started it. And so what an honor it would have been to be chosen, you know, to be that
Yeah.
person. But in the moment for the disciples, I'm sure it wasn't like this, like awe inspiring, like, oh, this is the moment, I'm going to be the one. Like, it was a sacrifice that they had to
Yeah.
make. But I think to hear Jesus say, like, come follow me, like, be a part of this, that what God's doing in the earth. And now the beautiful thing is we all have that call, you know, like just
Exactly.
like those disciples had, we have that call now. Like, if we are willing to lay it down, if we're willing to sacrifice and maybe even lay down the dreams that we thought we had,
Mm-hmm.
you know, to follow Jesus, like, it is the most amazing, insane, joy-filled, adventure-filled journey, you know,
Yeah.
that God is calling all of us to. And so, yeah, I think that's what I want my life to be known for, you know, because I think that's the only fruit that I've seen in my life is when I've chosen to, like, open up my hands and say, God, like, whatever you want, I'm here. Like, I'm here to
Mm-hmm.
follow you. And he is always so faithful to, like, fill my hands with what he wants me to steward. And so, yeah, I don't know if that answers your
Yeah.
question,
Yeah.
but
No, that
I think
definitely does.
for me, anyone in the Bible, it's like those guys, like, inspire me so much because they laid down something that was precious to them, you know,
Mm-hmm.
whether that was fishing or whatever their profession was. And I think we all have to do that in life, not just like
Yeah.
once, but multiple times. We're
Exactly.
always having to be willing to lay down our dream, lay down, like, what we think even God is saying sometimes, you know, like, even before I came to be a part of church here at the Blanco, I had to lay down some things in my life that I thought was the dream, that I thought was what was going to be my life and
Mm-hmm.
my career, relationships that I had. Like, I had to lay those things down to and sacrifice them, not knowing that something better was coming. You know, like, honestly, I
Yeah.
didn't know in that time, but just trusting God because I felt like He was saying, "Lay it down, and I'll give you something better." And He's done that. So I'm just, yeah, I'm constantly trying to still live in that place. You know.
Mm-hmm. Dude, that's amazing. And then no one's actually, I've only asked that question a few times, but no one said the disciples yet. So
Yeah,
I love that. Um, I mean, not that any answer is wrong that I've been getting, but I love
totally.
the perspective that you shared with how you relate to the disciples with laying things down. Because yeah, we could read back on them now and be like,
Totally.
man, can you imagine what it was like not knowing that your life would be written about and other people are now
Yeah.
looking at you as an example, which is so crazy to even think about. Like one day,
Yeah.
people, you know, if they ever come across our name on social media or something, they're gonna be like, I wonder what their story is. And then you get to know the person and you
Right.
realize, oh, we got similarities and things like that. Two more
Totally, man.
questions, and I
Yeah.
promise I'm done. But honestly,
You're
bro,
good, man.
it's been great. I just want to take a quick break and say it's been a great conversation that we've been having so far, and I know it's going to be a truly a blessing for the people that are me watching and listening to this.
Yeah.
Um, the question that I have is, so you guys have this conference that happens at your church, and what I found super crazy, and I think other people have done this, but I really stumbled upon it with you guys, is you guys have a conference coming up that's not just for those that live in Tennessee, but it's also for across the world. And I assume that you guys are probably going to put it online on Zoom or something like that. But the question that I have is for your conference coming up in September, because by the time this video releases, they'll still have time. But when your
Yeah.
conference releases, what is the theme this year, and what kind of sparked inside of you guys to host a conference even at your church?
Yeah. I mean, well, I think what we're calling this conference is "A Glorious Light Has Dawned." Is kind of the theme.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't really, like, have a theme that we stick to as far as, like, messages. Every message is about that, or all the songs are
Yeah.
about that. It's more of just, like, kind of an insight of what we feel like God's saying for the season. but we run conference a lot like we run church, where it's very free flow, like just trusting that God's going to highlight what he wants to do, and allowing the Holy Spirit to move. And so I think in the beginning, when we started doing conferences, our pastors, Henry and Alex, were kind of hesitant to doing it because they had come from a season where there was always conferences happening. It was always just like working towards conference. But God really like started speaking to them about doing a conference. And so we made it like an intentional decision of like, well, we're not going to just do a conference just because it seems like something we're supposed to do. But like do it because it's what God's saying to do. And every year it's like, it's been pretty wild. Like by the end of it, you kind of see like, you know, just a common theme throughout the conference. And usually it's not exactly what we thought it would be. And it kind of leads us into the next year even, you know, for what God's doing. So that's kind of the goal of it, is just to open up a space. And I think God always honors it when you kind of, what I was talking about a minute ago, when you like lay down some time in your life and you like set aside some time in your life, you set aside some finances in your life, even all of us as a team pay for conference like normal rates, you know. And so even though we're working the whole time, but that's just kind of like something in us of like, and Alex said to us early on, was you're going to get out of something what you sow into it, and what you find value in. Like what you find value in, you'll fully be in it. And so we really value this time together. And you're right, like it's an amazing opportunity for so many people, you know, not last year necessarily, but in past years from around the world have come to be a part of conference. And so that's exciting for us. And last year, because of COVID, we actually did a live stream for the first time of conference. We've usually never done a live stream. And I think we're doing that again this year, hopefully. And so literally anyone can be a part of what God's doing here and can glean from what God's doing in our house. And so we try to be really intentional about having like breakout sessions that are really practical about pastoral things, about worship, anything in church life, you name it, even stuff outside of church. We always do like social justice kind of stuff, finance, like sometimes stuff like that in our breakout sessions that is practical, because we know that God's not confined to four walls of a building.
That's right.
And so many people on our team and in our church that aren't on staff at church are seeing God move in amazing ways in their lives, you know. And you know, we have people in the songwriting industry here, or the music industry, that are writing pop songs or country songs, TV film songs, that God is just like moves in music business rooms, you know. So that kind of stuff a lot of times is what we're sharing about. Same with, you know, social justice kind of stuff, or finance, like those kind of things, giving people, you know, tools that they can run with and take out into whatever they do, and see God move in their lives. And so that's kind of what we do, is just a few days together, like really intense, intensive of like leaning into what God's speaking in this season.
That's incredible.
And so conference is always all of our favorite weeks of the year. So
yeah, no doubt. I'm hoping if it works out, I'll try to attend online, because I just saw like kind of what you guys have been doing for a number of years. And so even just having this opportunity to have a conversation with you has been a huge blessing to me. So I just want you to know that you are the man, Andrew. But
Thank
honestly,
you,
what God is doing with you guys is absolutely incredible. And I know even with you personally, he's probably doing some stuff in your life with you and your family that no one knows, and we don't need to, but I know it's going to be things that you probably haven't even expected yet. So just keep your ear tuned in, just like how you guys have been with your songwriting and the services and the way that you guys lead. And to close, the last question that I was going to ask is kind of what's next for you, or the Belonging Co. Are you guys working on anything special? Anything that you're able to share? Kind of what's next?
Yeah, well, for like our music, we're actually working on an album that will come out soon. I don't know when this podcast is coming out, but the album will release in May, the full album. And we have we have like three more singles coming out before then.
Mm.
And so that's exciting. The album's we're actually right now, as we're speaking, in the middle of mixing the album.
Wow.
But it's all turned into mix. So that's exciting. Some just really special songs that, similar to what we were talking about with Turn Your Eyes, that
Mm-hmm.
God has really just birthed in our house. And everything that we do for music is always based out of our church and our house. And so we wrote
Yeah.
these songs for our church and our house. And when we feel like it's something that needs to be released, we do that. But the goal is never for an album.
Mm-hmm.
But it always is exciting to like release it for everyone to hear and be a part of and join in on. And so that's exciting. Our church just started a college in 2020.
Wow, that's
Um,
amazing.
and so we've got around like 50 or 60 students here right now. And a portion of those are worship students. So
Mm-hmm.
I've been able to be a part of that. And we're currently in registrations for the next year. And so that's exciting, and that's going to grow and keep growing, I'm sure.
Of
It's kind of like
course.
just we're figuring it out as we go a little bit, but it's been so special, like having these students in church every week and being able to like see God move in their lives and even what they've taught us, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's been amazing. Yeah, there's so much happening. We're opening a new
Yeah.
location soon, which is exciting, and God's just moving and moving and moving. Keep on going.
That's exactly it, bro. That's exactly it. I
Yeah.
honestly, Andrew, it's been like I said earlier, it's been so good having this conversation. I know people are going to be blessed by it. But as we close, I just want to again let you know that I'm praying for you out here in Canada. I believe in what you're doing, and I believe in what God's doing through you and through your church. So know that you got someone out here praying for you. And I'm just excited to see, what's next. I'm excited to see what God does. And I'm sure we probably will reach
Yeah.
out or have another conversation at some point in the future. Who knows?
Yeah. Absolutely, man. Thanks so much for having me, Jerome.
Dude, it's been a blessing. Have an amazing day, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks.
All right. Bye.